Nice playbook. One protester at Obama's town hall meeting got a lot of attention when he showed up at the rally with a loaded gun, a sidearm. Quite an interview on Hardball last night with Chris Matthews, but he mentioned that he was a Ron Paul supporter, and that piqued my curiosity. I want a reaction from the congressman. He joins us on the line now, deep in the heart of Texas. Congressman, thanks for your time tonight. I appreciate it. What's your response to people showing up at a town hall meeting where the president is with a loaded gun?
Well, I think it proves a couple points. One thing, I think it really shows a remarkable restraint on the president and his Secret Service because they didn't overreact. They recognized what the state law was and that this man didn't break any laws and that he was just, practicing a right that he had. So I think this is very good, and Obama deserves credit for this. But I also think what this demonstrates is that it's the old conservative argument. It's not the gun that's the danger. It's the person that's dangerous. He's a peaceful person. He obeyed the law. He was not a man of violence, and it went quite well. So I think it was a remarkable demonstration when you compare to what 19 individuals could do with razor blades versus one man with a pistol that happens to be a law-abiding citizen.
So Congressman, we know what the law is. He was perfectly legal. He's on private property. But doesn't it somewhat defy common sense to show up where the president is with a loaded gun just to prove a point?
Well, to him it didn't. I wouldn't. I don't even own a gun, so I wouldn't be interested in doing that. But no, he was expressing himself. Don't you think sometimes people use the First Amendment and say terrible things and dumb things, and when the American Civil Liberties Union come in, they'll defend people that even defend radical, violent people, but who are saying bad things. So I would think to demonstrate he has a right to do this. And he believes, as many people believe, that an armed society is a more peaceful society, and he proved his point. I think he was remarkable in proving his point that he was a peaceful man and he caused no trouble.
I don't have a jaded opinion because I am a gun owner. I don't have a pistol, but I got deer rifles and shotguns and stuff like that. But we have had a situation in this country where a prisoner came up and overtook a guard and ended up shooting a judge and some other people in a courtroom. So I don't know how good that guy was in defending the firearm if somebody wanted to go nuts in a crowd when they saw a gun. And I'm not trying to overplay this. I mean, because it has happened in this country. Here's the point I want to make.
Could I comment on that?
Sure.
But you're just describing something where the government was in charge in a courtroom. They should provide the safety. In private property, the individuals provide the safety.
That's
so
true.
You just demonstrated that the government failed on that part. The government had a chance to react here, and I think they react rather remarkably.
Okay, well, but the same situation was apparent here, is that something could have happened if someone had seen that and decided to go off the handle and take the gun and do something. I mean, I'm surprised that, I understand the freedom of speech and all this stuff and gun ownership, but it just defies common sense to pull a stunt like this to get some attention. Now, I want to move the discussion quickly.
I don't think he was doing it for attention getting. I think he just did it all. That's the way he lives. That's the way a lot of people live up there.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I don't know if he carries a gun to work every day or not, but he sure showed up at that town hall meeting with the president with a firearm on.
I did a little campaigning up there, and it was sort of a little bit of a surprise to me. I don't say shocking, but it was. And I live in Texas, and there's a lot of guns hanging on gun racks and pickup trucks.
And Congressman,
but it was a little bit surprising to me.
All right. Great to have you on, Congressman Paul. I appreciate your time tonight. Thanks so much.
Terry Moran in Washington. This is Nightline, March 30th, 2010.
Good evening. I'm Terry Moran, and we begin tonight with the American militias, armed, constitutional, and increasingly active. There's been a sharp rise in militia activity recently, and over the past 72 hours, 9 members from one such group, Christian extremists calling themselves the Hutare. They were indicted and taken into custody by the FBI for allegedly plotting a violent anti-law enforcement attack. This incident has fueled the perception that the groups are sinister. But as Ryan Owens found out, many militia members say not only are they misunderstood, but they want to help.
They are not police officers.
Constant suppressive fire movement.
They're not active duty soldiers. But what these weekend warriors are doing in the woods near the Canadian border is perfectly legal. You're watching a Saturday training session of the 21st Battalion of North Idaho's Lightfoot Militia. A heavily armed force, we're told numbers more than 100. Although just about a dozen showed up on the Saturday we did. Along with an awful lot of shooting, they learned survival skills.
Insert the spike.
First aid lessons from one of their members, who's also a firefighter.
It's called the external jugular.
Their leader is Major Jeff Stankevich, an unemployed welder with zero military experience.
The government should be afraid of its people so that it doesn't do stuff it's not supposed to do. And it would make them think twice.
Randall Klein is one of the newest members of the militia. He too lost his job and joined about a month ago.
What is it that you're worried about?
It's not just about Barack Obama, but certainly he's gotten me worried, and not just him, Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, all the rest. I mean, obviously, to me, they want to become dictators of the United States.
Well, it's like
these men and a few women are the new faces of this country's militia movement. Their numbers have exploded in the past year. Some say due to the recession. Others say their surge is largely because of the election of the first black president. Those who track militias say they all but disappeared over the last decade. The militias of the 90s were inspired by the standoff at Ruby Ridge, where federal agents shot and killed the wife of white supremacist Randy Weaver, and by the government's botched raid on the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas. The men of today's militia still fear the government, but they worry more about the federal takeover of the healthcare system or the collapse of the economy than black helicopters and armed agents. We sat down with a few members of the Idaho militia to try to understand their motivations.
I started off handing out flyers to get our first meeting going. It was a year ago. It was April 15th at the first Tax Day Tea Party rallies. And I thought if we don't start preparing now, it might be too late. You never know what's coming around the corner.
What happens if the federal government goes bankrupt and the millions of people who were brought up on welfare all of a sudden don't get their checks? What are they going to do?
These men do share at least one belief with the militiamen of the past.
How much of this is about the right to bear arms for you?
Oh, okay. Second Amendment issues. I believe that it's the most important of the amendments. The Second Amendment is the one that puts the teeth in all the other amendments.
Even though they're based just miles from Ruby Ridge, in a part of the country known for white supremacy, they say bigotry is not part of their ideology.
In a constitutional militia such as what we are, racism has no place.
I've even had people ask me about Muslims joining the group. And I said, I would have no problem with Muslims joining the group, and they can't believe that.
Jeff was talking about letting Muslims in, and that would be okay in theory, but a couple of us voiced the concern that we don't want to get shot in the back like what happened in Fort Hood.
They say they do not advocate violence against the government or its employees, and disavow groups like the Hutare militia, whose members were arrested this week accused of plotting to kill police officers. Woods, he explained why.
Does the militia have an image problem?
Oh, big time. Everyone in the country, if you ask them about the militia, it's a bunch of gun-toting, drunken rednecks who run around the woods shooting at anything that moves. And that's not who these guys are. You know, they have jobs, they own businesses. These are not crazy people.
Speaking of state issues, the man firing that very large gun is hoping to be the next governor of Idaho. One of his major campaign promises, support a statewide militia.
I think in the way politics are going in the United States and the Tea Party movements, I mean, the whole atmosphere promotes people wanting to get prepared. And I think that's what this is all about.
Republican Rex Rommel raised eyebrows last year when he joked he'd like to buy a license to hunt President Obama. When he ran for Senate in 2008, he got a measly 5%. This year, He says things have changed.
It's because of the current administration's policies. The more they force upon the states, the more noise there is, the more concern people have, the less freedom there is. We're not going to allow them to come into the state and make what we believe are unconstitutional mandates. If these guys want to show a little force behind the scenes, I don't have a problem with that.
I keep telling the guys, I've said it at meetings, I don't know how many times, I'll be happy to be an old man with some really nice hunting and camping gear and have nothing ever happen. That would be the best.
I'm Ryan Owens for Nightline in Sandpoint, Idaho.
Armed and ready, if necessary.
It's not about justice, it's not about agenda, it's not about mobilizing people, it's about dialing for corporate dollars. These two parties have sold the U.S. government and the American people to the highest bidders.
The United States of America is a terrorist base of operations.